right, so in economics, we're concerned with questions both large and small, right? So we are going to be discussing all microeconomic concepts here, but we need to understand the distinction between microeconomic concepts and macroeconomic concepts, right? So microeconomic concepts focus on the actions, right? This is all about the decisions that humans make of individual agents within an economy. When we're talking about individual agents, what do we mean? Well, we do mean people, individuals, right? But think about a lot of the economic decisions that are made, that you make. Do you make them in a vacuum? Do you make them independent of every other living soul in the world? No. You make them dependent and contextualized on your family, right? On maybe your spouse, if you have a long-term spouse or a husband or a wife, but maybe your mother, your father, your sister, right? So we also talk a lot about households, because we find that households act more so than individuals themselves. But then we also kind of classify different individuals when they put their worker hat on. And then we talk about, what if you put a bunch of individuals together and they focus on doing a particular task? Well, that's a business. So we talk about collection of individuals doing economic activity. So microeconomics, you can think of as the tree and macroeconomics as the forest. But I like to think of microeconomics as looking at one type of fish in a pond, in the full ecosystem of a pond, right? And you can look at all the different types of algae in a pond and how the algae interacts with the fish, right? And so like a pond and each individual element of the pond ecosystem makes more sense to me because it is more varied than just kind of tree, right? And then macroeconomics is looking at the overall health of the pond. What's the oxygenation level of the pond? What's the different, biomass evolution, whatever the case may be, right? So that's kind of just conceptually how to think about it. How do we actually think about it? So macroeconomics, right? Microeconomics is like a microscope. You're zooming into stuff. Macroeconomics is zooming out. We're looking at, giant cities and things like that, right? We're looking at broad issues. Broad issues such as growth. We're experiencing really great growth here in the United States. Macroeconomics talks about why that is and what parts of this economy are growing strongly, what parts are not. Unemployment. Again, we're experiencing some of the best unemployment rates and some of the highest amount of job creation numbers that we've seen in a long time, right? The recent numbers in February were still very strong, but we also found that they revised downward the estimates that they had for December and January. So somewhat of a mixed bag, right? Macroeconomics talks about what that means, what the causes are of that, and what the trade-offs are between impacting this and impacting, say, something like inflation, right? You oftentimes hear people talk about inflation when they're talking about unemployment because they, are tied as exhibited by the Phillips curve. And then lastly, right, you'll often hear people talk about, our trade imbalance or the trade surplus that China has and the dangers that it causes, right? That's all macroeconomic international flow of funds, financial flow, monetary stuff.